A teacher in Ireland is giving an English lesson and asks the class for examples of when they have heard the word contagious being used. One eager child says, "Daddy says to cover my mouth when I cough because my cold is contagious." "Very good," replied the teacher. "Has anybody else got an example?" "My mummy says my laugh is contagious," said another child. "Great answer," said the teacher. "How about you, Paddy?" "Well, our neighbour was painting his fence with a toothbrush," said Paddy. "Dad says it's going to take the contagious." 1. One day, the family cat dies. The daughter is traumatized because the cat was found on the floor, on its back with its legs in the air. She asks, "Why is she like this?" The quick-thinking father asks, "It's so that Jesus can come down and carry her up to heaven." The daughter seems to accept this explanation and feels better for it. A few days later, the father comes home from work, and the daughter runs up to him shouting, "Daddy, Daddy! Mummy almost died today." He says, "What? What happened?" Daughter: "She was lying down on the floor, with her arms and legs in the air shouting, 'Jesus, I'm coming!' And if the milkman hadn't been holding her down, she definitely would have gone. Daddy." 2. A mother, father, and daughter onion are out for a walk. They get to the streetlight at an intersection, and as the walk sign lights up, they begin to cross. But a careless driver catches the shorter onion, and she rolls to the side of the road, horribly injured. She is rushed to the hospital, and after a few hours, the doctor comes to the waiting room to speak to the parents. "Sir, ma'am, I have good news and bad news." "Okay, give it to us, Doc. We want to know how she's doing." "Well," says the doctor, "the good news is that your daughter is going to live." The parent onions feels a huge relief, and then ask for the bad news. The bad news is she's going to be a vegetable for the rest of her life. 3. On a very windy day, a rabbi was walking along when a strong gust of wind blew his hat off his head. The rabbi ran after the hat, but the wind was too strong. It kept blowing his hat farther and farther away. A non-young man, seeing what had happened, ran after the hat, caught it and gave it back to the rabbi. The rabbi was so grateful that he gave the young man $20 and blessed him. The young man was so excited that he decided to go to the racetrack, and with the rabbi's blessing, he decided to check the program and place the entire $20 on a horse. After the races, he went home and recounted his very exciting day to his father. "I arrived at the 5th race and looked at the program. I saw this horse named Top Hat was running. The odds on this horse were 100 to 1, but since I received the rabbi's blessing, I bet the entire $20 on Top Hat, and guess what? He won." In the next race, there was a horse named Bowler at 30 to 1, so I bet the entire amount of my winnings on him, and guess what? I won again. "So did you bring the money home?" asked his father. "No," said the son. "I lost it all on the last race. There was a horse named Chateau that was a heavy favorite, so I bet everything on him. And since Chateau means hat in French, I figured he was a sure thing." "You fool," said the father. "Hat in French is chapeau, not chateau." Sighing to himself, the father then asked, "So who did win the race?" "A real long shot," said the son. "Some Spanish horse named Sombrero." 4. A family of moles wakes up from hibernation. They start digging up to the surface to get some air and stretch their legs. When they arrive, there's a layer of concrete that wasn't there before. They dig around the concrete, and Papa Mole pokes his head out and smells fresh pancakes. Oh, they must have built a pancake house up there. It smells great. Mama Mole, right behind Papa, sniffs and says, "Oh wow, the syrups smell delicious." Baby Mole, in the hole behind both Papa and Mama, says, "Yuck, all I can smell are molasses from back here." 5. One evening, a man was at home watching TV and eating peanuts. He'd toss them in the air and then catch them in his mouth. In the middle of catching one, his wife asked him a question. And as he turned to answer her, a peanut fell in his ear. He tried and tried to dig it out, but succeeded in only pushing it in deeper. He called his wife for assistance, and after hours of trying, they became worried and decided to go to the hospital. As they were ready to go out the door, their daughter came home with her date. After being informed of the problem, their daughter's date said he could get the peanut out. The young man told the father to sit down, then proceeded to shove 2 fingers up the father's nose and told him to blow hard. When the father blew, the peanut flew out of his ear. The mother and daughter jumped and yelled for joy. The young man insisted that it was nothing. Once he was gone, the mother turned to the father and said, "That's so wonderful! Isn't he smart? What do you think he's going to be when he grows older?" The father replied, "From the smell of his fingers, our son-in-law." 6. A mom and her daughter were taking a cab across town. On the way, they drove by a couple of ladies of the night, standing on a corner, provocatively dressed and looking for business. The inquisitive little girl asked, "Mom, what are those ladies doing there?" The mom replied, "They're waiting for a bus." The cab driver interjected, "Lady, tell her the truth. She looks old enough to me." The little girl glared at her mom and said, "I am 8 years old now." So the mother, exasperated, replied to the little girl, "Well, you know how you learned about how babies are made. Those ladies are paid money by the men and try to make a baby with them." The little girl thought about this for a moment and then replied, "What happens to all those babies?" Without missing a beat, the mother said loudly, "They grow up to be cab drivers." 7. I was talking to my neighbor's 6-year-old daughter, and she said she wanted to be president someday. Both of her parents, liberal Democrats, were standing there. So I asked her, "If you were to be the president, what's the first thing you would do?" She replied, "I'd give food and houses to all the homeless people." Wow, what a worthy goal, I told her. You don't have to wait until you're president to do that. You can come over to my house and mow the grass, pull weeds and sweep my yard, and I'll pay you $50. Then I'll take you over to the grocery store where the homeless guy hangs out, and you can give him the $50 to use toward food or a new house. She thought that over for a few seconds, 'cause she's only 6. And while her mom glared at me, the little girl looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Why doesn't the homeless guy come over and do the work, and you can just pay him the $50? And I said, "Welcome to the Republican Party." Her folks still aren't talking to me. 8. Walking hand in hand, a daughter looks up at her father and asks, "Daddy, what did you want to name me?" "Zelda Honey," he responded. "I wanted to name you Zelda, but on the night you were born, Mommy said there was no way I was naming you Zelda. You see, Honey, Mommy went through a lot that night, and I was in no position to win naming rights. But why Zelda? She asked. Because Zelda is intelligent, kind, and is loved by the people around her. Just like you. Liking the sound of that, she smiled at him and said, "Oh, I love you, Daddy." And smiling back, he replied, "I love you too, Ganon." 9. There was a father who was very proud of his 3 daughters. Every night he took a stroll around the house to make sure everything was all right. One night he could hear laughter coming from his youngest daughter's room. When he reached the window of his second daughter, he could hear her crying. There were no sounds at all coming from his oldest daughter's room. The next day, when they were all gathered around the breakfast table, he said to his youngest daughter, "I heard you laughing last night as I walked past your window. Why was that?" She answered, "That's because you taught me to laugh when someone was making me happy." He then asked his second daughter why she was crying. She answered, "Because you taught me to cry when someone was making me sad." He then said his oldest daughter, "I didn't hear anything from you," to which she replied, "That's because you taught me not to talk with my mouth full." 10. A grandmother was surprised when she wakes up to a cup of coffee from her 8-year-old grandson. She gulped down the most bitter coffee she has ever tasted, but she downs it all because she wants her grandson to feel like he made something his grandma loved. At the bottom of the cup, she found 3 little green army men. Puzzled, she asked, "Honey, what are these toys doing in my coffee?" The boy replied, "I'm just doing what it says on the TV, Grandma." The best part of waking up is soldiers in your cup.